Tanse, Oki, Sego. Good morning. My name is Darryl Lickers. I'm a registered member of the Six Nations of the Grand River Mohawk Territory in southwestern Ontario, but presently live in Blackfalds with my wife Karen, 2 grandkids, and Kramer the dog. I am an Indigenous veteran who served 25 years with various Army units in the Canadian Armed Forces. I began my infantry career in Calgary with the Queen's Own Rifles of Canada in 1965. Then I went to Germany for 3 years, where I rebadged to the 2nd Battalion Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. I have also served with the Canadian Airborne Regiment as a paratrooper, and later the Logistics Branch as a cook, which brought me west to Canadian Forces Base Penhold. So I began in Alberta and retired in Alberta. I'm very honored and humbled that the School Division has asked me to represent Indigenous veterans and to speak to you this day as we honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. I'm also honored to be on the traditional lands of the peoples of Treaties 6 and 7. So, as we do each year on November 11th, we gather to remember and pay our respects to the fallen. Remember, for veterans, every day is Remembrance Day. Indigenous warriors have fought for this great land, our country, from the War of 1812, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and various UN peacekeeping missions throughout the world. In 2 world wars, First Nations people were exempt from conscription, were not considered citizens of Canada, and did not have the right to vote. Despite this, 4,000 First Nations men volunteered for service in World War I, and over 300 died. 20,000 First Nations men volunteered for service in World War II, and over 200 died. These numbers represent about 30% of First Nations men eligible to serve. To serve in the Canadian Air Force or Canadian Navy, you had to be of pure European descent, although this was rescinded in 1940 for the Air Force and 1943 for the Navy. Canada's Indigenous soldiers met these challenges and others as demonstrated by the number of decorations for bravery they were awarded. Corporal Francis Pegabegamau of Ojibwe from Perry Island, Ontario, was the most decorated First Peoples soldier in World War I. He was a skilled sniper and trench raider and received the military medal 3 times. He returned to become chief of his band. Thomas George Tommy Prince, an Ojibwe from Manitoba, is Canada's most decorated Indigenous war veteran. After spectacular acts of bravery and cleverness in full view of German soldiers and critical reconnaissance missions, he received the American Silver Star and 6 service medals. He was awarded the Military Medal for Gallantry by King George VI in 1945. When he came back to Canada, he was refused the same rights as other returning veterans and couldn't find work, so he re-enlisted and served in Korea. So today, as we do on November 11th, and always, we should remember that more than 500 Indigenous soldiers gave their lives during these 3 wars, defending values that were meaningful to all Canadians. As for me, my service was during an era known as the Cold War era, but the Vietnam War was also being fought in Southeast Asia. Many Indigenous Canadians fought alongside U.S. soldiers. My experiences relate mostly to mostly peacekeeping missions. I did 4 tours of duty on the island of Cyprus. One of those tours was at a time when Turkish forces invaded the island and we peacekeepers were caught in the middle of a war between Turkey and Greece for control of the island. I also served at a time when there was turmoil right here on our own soil. In 1970, I was engaged in what was known as the October Crisis, or the FLQ crisis, in Quebec. It was an exciting career, which, if I had to do over again, I would wholeheartedly. If you could go away with one thought, I would ask that would be that we should remember not just once a year, but every day the sacrifices of all veterans that have served this great country. So in closing, I would like to thank all schools, students, staff, and the school division for once again asking me to participate in your ceremony to honor the 128,000 who made the ultimate sacrifice to keep our country free, and those who died later as a result of their experiences. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Nyawan. This means thank you in the Mohawk language.